Hola, mi gente. Welcome to another episode of the Wine Chisme Podcast. And, if you've listened for any amount of time, you know that I have struggled when it comes to my uterine health. And in November, I had a full hysterectomy. But, I I hope that nobody has to go through all of the things that I went through. However, I've recently met an amiga who is sharing her perspective and is a licensed doctor in Mexico, but now lives in Chicago. So has to go through these other things, but she still is, determined to share not only her story, but to help other women going through, in her instance, PCOS. So it's always an opportunity to talk, to share. That is so unbelievably important. So welcome, Lizzie Osnorio, right? Or
Osorno.
Osorno.
Yeah,
Osorno.
Osorno.
Sorry. I know an Osorio too. So that's I like
The
I just
football
saw.
player.
So so Miss Elizabeth, Everything, Miss Osorno, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for inviting me. I know we've had previous conversations and it's always been a blast to chat. So I am excited for today.
I am too. Well, I'll read your bio, but before we get into all of the cheese, may we always start with the wine. I know you're in Chicago, so it's 5 o'clock over there. I know. What are you drinking today? You don't have to be drinking wine, but if you're drinking wine, let us know what you're drinking.
Yeah, definitely. So I put a lot of thought about it. I really wanted to get my favorite wine, but I didn't get a chance to do it. And so the one that I'm drinking today, because of course, I mean, wine and chismecito, how could you not drink? It's a Masolino called Barbera de Alba. It's a really interesting story because we, a friend of my boyfriend, her dad has a friend who sells wine, and apparently they sell by boxes. But if one of the wines, I think they come like 12, but if one of them like breaks or is messed up or something happens, they can't use the whole box of wines. So what they do is they prep these other boxes where they just put random 12 like types of different wines, ranging from like $4 to like $60, and you just pay 60 for 12. And so we kind of got it that way, and I had never had it before, but I'm excited to try it.
Is it Latino owned?
No, so apparently it's made in Birmingham. I guess it's
Okay,
Alabama.
Birmingham,
Hmm.
Alabama.
It says AL, so I
Yeah,
think
that's Alabama. Oh, that's
yeah.
so interesting.
Hmm.
So interesting. Well, what is normally your favorite wine?
So I love tempranillos. Man, yeah. In Casa
There is
Mexico, I
a
really like to.
Yeah, there is a very good tempranillo. I love tempranillos because of the pepperiness, you
Yeah.
know, then it's a little heavier. So like when it's cold or when you're having, a steak or something a little heftier, they are so good at tempranillo.
Yeah.
Uh, we have Vinos Unidos who has Triunfo is their
Mhm.
tempranillo is when they're tempranillos. It is so good. It is so good. Um, I am having our seis soles. This is a colibri, and this is a uh Carnignan. I forget how to say. It's so hard to say it. I always forget. But this is a 2022, and it's comes from a 117-year-old vineyard.
Oh, wow. That is
Yeah, out
exciting.
of Lodi. So, salud, salud, guys.
Cheers.
There we go.
Hmm. It's actually pretty nice. I was kind of afraid because it says that it contains sulfite, so I'm like, I don't want to get a headache. So we shall see.
Yeah. Well, so they also have those things that you can put in your like
I've
in your
seen.
drinks and
Mhm.
stuff. Honestly, they don't, it doesn't, I think sometimes can it affect you? Yes. Sometimes people can be allergic, but I also think, and what I've talked from other people, it's like power of suggestion, right? Like
Mhm.
people say, oh, you make sure it doesn't have sulfites, da 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 da. And then you get it in your head, like, oh my gosh, you can have sulfites. And you've never had a reaction. Like you might have been drinking wine for all these years and never had a reaction, but then it's like, again, it's the power of suggestion that happens. And then all of a sudden we're so worried, and maybe it never affected you to begin with. And, but then again, power of suggestion, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I don't feel good.
Yeah.
Right. I don't feel, but it could be power of suggestion, or it could be nothing. But again, I think it's so important that we realize, like, what um is that something I am allergic to? Pay attention, right? Because if you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I've been drinking wine for all these years, never had a reaction, and all of a sudden you're having a reaction, is it there's an actual reaction, or is it something that's coming from your mentally to cause the reaction?
Yeah, or like externally, right? Other things that are affecting and that it just kind of happened. You're
Yeah.
supposed to work and you're having that wine and then you're having a headache type of
Exactly. But I know for me, I could go through an entire glass of wine, an entire glass, duh, an entire bottle of wine by myself, and I'm fine. I'll feel good. I would definitely be like,
thing. Nice.
ooh.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, not me. The next day I'm gonna have a hangover and I'm gonna be like, what? I love wine, but it really, it really does not
No,
do
that's
me
so
that
crazy
well.
because I'm so not like that.
Yeah.
Like I'm so minus my experience is so different. Well, let me read your bio, Ellie, and we'll get into it. Because I am like when we were talking and everything, I was like, you have to be on the podcast. Like just from everything that I've gone through and I've experienced. So Ellie is a registered dietitian, medical doctor, and Latina PCOS expert dedicated to helping women lose weight and manage their symptoms without giving up their cultural foods. After being diagnosed with PCOS herself and hearing the same generic advice so many women receive, quote unquote, just take birth control and come back when you want to get pregnant, she realized how little support existed, especially for Latinas. The lack of culturally and relevant resources in the PCOS community pushed her to take matters into her own hands. Now, through her high fiber, flexible plant-based approach, geez Louise, she helps Latinas regulate their periods, improve energy, and feel amazing in their skin without restrictive diets or cutting out the foods they love. Her mission is simple: to make PCOS manageable, sustainable, empowering, and culturally inclusive. Girl. And I
Oof.
want to read what you said because, I ask everybody what their why is. And I think the
Mhm.
beginning to share this at the beginning is really crucial because, and you say you always thought that you were the type of woman who you just constantly felt tired, bloated, stuck in the cycle of weight gain and loss, anxious, just wanting to be this tiny little person in bed because you weren't feeling good physically or emotionally. I'm going to stop there at that moment, right? But I totally, girl, I so understand what you're saying when you're talking about this because although, and I guess I've never been, who knows, I might have had PCOS because I've had everything else that can go wrong in your uterus pretty much, with the exception of having cervical cancer. But they did think at for a while I did have it.
Mhm.
Um, growing up, and like when you first started having your cycle and everything like that, what were the kind of the first things that you noticed? I mean, I just like, what were the first kind of symptoms and how old were you when you noticed? Was it right when you started your cycle? Was it years after? I'm really curious in regards to that.
Yeah, so it was years after I got my cycle, but the way I got my first period was kind of like traumatic, or now I laugh about it, but like at the moment, I was 9 years old, which is like pretty
Oh, you're
young
super
to have a
young.
period. Of course, my mom and no one at school had told me, like, women go through periods. Like, that was not a conversation I was having. And then it ended up happening that it was like the day of like Children's Day, like April 30th in Mexico. So we went camping with my school as a trip. And I got my period there. So imagine in the cabins, no showers, no
Oh
clue
my
about what is a
God.
period, and you're just like feeling like you're alone and by yourself. So traumatic experience. Now I laugh about it, but in the moment I'm like, oh my God, girl, like, like what happened during that time?
Oh my God. I
And
think so I just want to ask another follow-up question really quick in regards to that. Now I know in like elementary school, at least when I went to elementary school, they were showing like the films and talking about the changes in your body and all of that. And you had to get your parents had to sign off that it was
Mhm.
okay. In Mexico, do they do those types of things at
I
all?
never got any type of like sex ed or any form of education. And also, I was 9. So I don't in Mexico, when you're 9, you're still like, you don't get any information regarding periods at all. Years later, talking to my mom, I realized that she also had like a very early period. I think she was like 9 as well, or 8.5. So, that was like very interesting. And then I didn't have any issues with my period, from what I remember, like not really issues. I started medical school, and then that's when I was like 18, 19. I started noticing that my periods were more irregular than normal. But for me, I was like, well, I'm skipping a month or two. That's amazing. Like I don't have to, think about it. I don't have to have cramps. So I never really thought much about it. In the, contrary, it was like a blessing in disguise type of thing.
Mhm.
But alongside all of those symptoms, I was constantly feeling super bloated. Like you could see my stomach and you would be like, is she pregnant? Or like, what's going on? Just because of how bloated I was. And my energy was like really, really low. Sometimes I was like, well, you're in medical school, right? Like you're studying and you're
Mhm.
doing, and of course you're tired. But I would see my friends and then I would see myself, and I would notice that I would really need things to just focus and be able to study. And, I would not go out on weekends because I was like super exhausted from the whole week. And then I would have friends that are like, hanging out and doing stuff. And I'm like, what is going on, right? And my mood was also all over the place. I always kind of suffered since I was in high school with like back acne, and I never thought anything about it. So if you start thinking about it, it was like a lot of those little things that happened, but there was no correlation to it, right? Like I was more tired, I was gaining and losing weight in medical school, I was super bloated, I had irregular periods, I had back acne, but nothing was like, oh, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I want to stop you really quick
yeah.
because I want to go back to a couple of things. One, um, I know I didn't I was gonna ask you and I forgot to ask you like when that finally happened, when you had your like you got your first cycle, you're not home, you're not with your mom, you're not like what what happened? Who did you like? I just kind of like I feel like people are like, wait, Jessica, you skipped over like what the hell happened to her? She had her period in the woods on a camping
Oh
trip
my God.
and scared. What happened?
Yeah, and there were like no showers, and we were in the mud playing, and I'm like this like 9-year-old scared girl that doesn't know if she's like dying or if it's like normal, like type of thing. So I actually didn't really tell anyone. Like I didn't feel confident enough to tell my teachers. And of course, I didn't tell any of my friends. So, like we're all 9. Like I just thought this was the one thing that was happening to me, and no one would know. Now, in retrospect, of course, I would be like, I would have, told a teacher, but I didn't tell anyone. And I just kind of like went with it the whole 3 days of just having cramps, using toilet paper, and, just being like,
But
I
did you know
dated
what it
another.
was? Did
Yeah.
you know this was my period, or you're just
No,
like,
I had
what's
no
going
idea. I
on?
literally, when I'm telling you, I had no idea if I was gonna be dead because I was bleeding or if this was normal. Like that's how I had no idea what was going on. I just knew that I was having blood and I needed toilet paper and I couldn't tell anyone and I was in the woods and it was like the Children's National Day type of
Oh
thing.
my gosh. That
So yeah, so stressful.
and what happened when you got home? Did you go straight to your mom and let her know what happened?
I think that's one of those like blocked memories because I have no idea what happened afterwards.
Oh
I
my
don't know if I told her. I
gosh.
don't know if like a teacher told her. Like I have no idea what happened next. But it's one of those things that I just remember, I literally remember the ponds that were like full of mud and me playing. That's like the bathrooms. Those are like the things that I remember, but I don't remember what happened, after I got home.
Oh my gosh. That is so nuts. That
Yeah.
that's what happened. Like that's what you went through. Okay, let's fast forward again. Now you're having these symptoms
Mhm.
and you're like what from when you actually figured out you were starting your cycle and before you started showing symptoms, was it pretty like were you having a pretty normal standard cycle, or was it you were starting to miss things, or you were starting to skip periods like from the get-go, or was it like everything was normal till you hit like 18, 19?
Yeah. So it's a little bit hard to answer that question just because if you ask me, I really, until like 8 years ago, I didn't even know how to track my period, like it's that crazy. Like,
Wow.
that you can do it like on this month, I have it and then I finish, but really, really like tracking, taking your temperature, knowing if you're ovulating. I had no idea about any of that. So if you ask me, my memory is like, yes, I was having regular, consistent periods until I was 18. But is that the truth? I have no idea. Maybe I had shorter periods, maybe I had longer periods. I always had the idea that everyone ovulates day 14 and everyone has a 28-day cycle, and that's not really accurate. So I don't know that in between, but from what I remember, nothing was out of the normal for me to like think that I needed to, go see an OBGYN. I
Right.
ended up going to see an OBGYN because I was in med school. I was already in sixth semester. We were actually going through the class of OBGYN. So all like, women's health. And that's when I went to see an OBGYN. And so she did the ultrasound and it's crazy because at that moment I was super excited. When you go through med school, we always say that we students get like hypochondriac because you have everything that you're learning and studying. And so for me, seeing something that I had just learned, and then I'm seeing an ultrasound that I have it, I'm like, oh my God, I have it, right? But you never really know like the extent of what that means for you. You're just
Yeah.
excited because you saw something that you read in a book and now you're seeing it there. So they did the ultrasound, they saw the ring of pearls. Then I
What
had,
is the ring of pearls?
so basically it's one of the ways that they can help you diagnose PCOS. With PCOS, one of the things that don't happen is ovulation. And so we have follicles in our ovaries, and those follicles throughout your cycle, what happens is that they get ready for ovulation. If they don't ovulate, then that's when we have our period, right? But with PCOS, there's no ovulation. So your follicles kind of like start growing and then they just stay there. And there's no way to, we don't have a period, there's no ovulation, so they just kind of stay there. So they end up being like these little like pouches, well, not pouches. They call them cysts, but they're not really cysts, but they're like
Yeah.
little balls and they look like a rosary basically, like one of those rosaries. It
Really?
it looks like that. So that is one of the things I had. And then as I was talking to the OBGYN, I noticed that I was telling her that I also had like the back of my neck and in my armpits, not a discoloration, but the contrary, I had like darker patches. And so that is one of the signs of insulin resistance. And so, the acne, the ultrasound. Then I was telling her my regular period, and then also taking into account that I had the darker patches. She was like, "You have PCOS."
Insulin resistance is part of a PCOS? Wow.
Yeah, like around 80% of people with PCOS tend to have some certain degree of insulin resistance.
Wow. Okay, so let me just, for those who do not know, in Mexico, in the States, you go to the university, you apply for med school, you go to med school, you go through like it's a good 10 years before, 8 to 10 years before you're a licensed physician. In Mexico, people decide their like career right out of high school and
Yeah.
they go directly into that. So you decided you want to be a doctor, so you apply and you go directly into medical school.
Mhm. Yeah, when you're 18.
Yeah.
So
How do you feel about that? I feel like it's like kind of a sometimes it could be a good thing, like, but then kind of it could be a bad thing, because what if you decide midway, wait, this is not what I want to do?
yeah, and that's an amazing question because I had a lot of conversations with my friends from the international side of the school, which was like Americans and Puerto Ricans, because they go to medical school when they're like 25 and above. Like all
Because
of
which
my
we
friends,
talked about, which we found out, one of my really good friends went to the same medical school you did,
yeah.
except on the international side.
Uh-huh. And so, like, all of my friends, think about it. I was 18. My boyfriend was 28 because he was American. And then all of our friends were 28 to 35. So I was the puppy there. Like, I was 18, and then everyone had already, like, done life, right? Like, they were second career people.
Girl,
They
I know you
had
got some neck
families,
snapping when you said you were 18 and your boyfriend was 28.
right?
I know some neck snapped at that.
Yeah, my parents were not the happiest, but he's such a good person. And so we talked a lot about that question, and I always said that I wish we had kind of college, like you guys do college here and then go to medical school because we're too young, like 18, like 18, you're finally legal, you're ready to party, but then you also have to study at a certain degree because you are going to be saving lives, like it's such a pressure. So I'm one of the people who would agree more that, having those like at least 2 years of going to different classes, figure out what is it that you want to do. And then if you do want to do, med school, then you get into med school. Because yes, like they were 28, I was 18, we were studying the same thing. Of course, the maturity level, it's different. They've done other things, they're really passionate and they really know what is it that they want to do. So in my opinion, I agree with you.
Well, I just want to like get, because I know we've all gone through a lot of things, uh, you know, and I want to kind of, I looked up, and please, like, you, if there's more to it, please like interject. Between PCOS, which I realized I probably did not have just based on everything you're saying, endometriosis and fibroids, both of which I did have. So, PCOS, which is the polycystic ovary syndrome, is a hormonal imbalance, often with high levels of androgens leading to irregular periods, ovarian cysts, and potential infertility. And you were saying like your symptoms, but it is very irregular periods, excess hair growth, acne, weight gain, difficulty, like all the things that you're saying. In endometriosis is when the endometrial tissue, which is the tissue lining the uterus, grows outside of the uterus
Mhm.
on the ovaries, fallopian tubes, or pelvic cavity. You could tell that I did not get good sleep last night. And that comes with painful menstrual periods, chronic pelvic pain, pain during intercourse, infertility, and fatigue. Um, and then uterine fibroids are benign tumors of the uterus made of muscle and fibrous tissue. Again, heavy menstrual bleeding, painful periods, pelvic pressure or pain, and in some cases, uh, infertility. So I think those are like the three main things that a lot of women battle when it comes to their uterine health. For myself, it was the other two. And this is not about me, but I know obviously I have some similarities, just when it comes to our uterine health, because I do want to share, like do a whole episode of everything that I went through. Um, but I just wanted to make sure that I gave the differences between those things because I think, first of all, we're not really told what it is. It's not explained to us. Like a doctor might just, unless they've diagnosed you with it, they don't, I feel like it's not explained. Wine break. Time to refill that glass and come back for more wine and cheese.
And even when they diagnose you, not a lot of times it's explained.
Yeah. I mean, like for myself, we have a family history of fibroids.
Mhm.
And how and when I told my OBGYN, and I know this is part of why you do what you do, it was, you're young, you're healthy, you're fine. When you're ready to have kids, we'll take a look at everything. But for myself, like I know you said you experienced it starting at like 18, 19 years old. I was having very heavy periods almost from the get go. And
Mhm.
I was having debilitating cramps from like seventh, eighth grade when I started my cycle. I think I started between the summer of sixth and seventh grade. And from go, I was experiencing horrendous cramps. So when you went through this, and obviously when you're 12 years old, 12, 13 years old, and you're experiencing these things, and then my mom was like, I did too. And then you're sitting, like
Mhm.
you start thinking, oh my gosh, this is just what life is. But when you're 18, you're a little bit more, you're like, wait, this has changed, this has shifted. What did your, like, when your doctor told you this sounds like PCOS, what did she really like give you an explanation? And did that affect like how you were, like how you approached medical school and what you wanted to do in medical school?
Yeah, so basically what she told me was basically what they told you, the same. The only difference was that they gave me birth control because that way I would be able to regulate my period, right? And so yeah, she basically was like, take some birth control and whenever you want to get pregnant, we can reassess and see course of action. And the thing is, as I said, I was literally in women's health class during that time. And it was the same thing that my book said. My book was two sentences of PCOS. This is what happens. Course of treatment, birth control. Like literally metformin if they have prediabetes. So basically what she told me was the same that I had, you know, read before in the past. So I didn't take much of that. I was like, okay, this is it. That is PCOS. I just take birth control. I don't have diabetes. Move along. And in reality, it took me years to actually like start thinking about like, okay, what should I do about my PCOS that's not birth control? Because I had a really bad time with birth control. So I took the pill and I gained more weight. I did the ring and I was losing my hair and my back acne was horrible. Then they gave me the patch and my mood was horrible. I couldn't stop bleeding. So I had so many reactions to all kinds of birth control that I was just like, I'm just not going to do anything. I was like, it's harder for me to get pregnant. I don't have cycles that often. It is what it is type of thing. I know, and a doctor. And I'm just like, writing it. But yeah, that's basically what I got. So really, it didn't change much of how I was approaching medical school because what I read is what she told me. She didn't tell me anything extra about it. She never told me that my mood, my hormones, metabolism, so many, my gut health, so many aspects were going to be impacted by just having PCOS. That PCOS is forever. I can't get rid of having PCOS. So everything that I do, it has to be consistent and on a daily basis because if not, I can just go back to feeling the way that I was feeling. So yeah, it took me like probably when I was diagnosed to then actually do something about it, maybe like 7, 8 years, which is crazy, right? It's crazy. And those 7 years, I was like bloated, hair loss. Like you could see here that I was losing my hair when I was brushing my hair, like it was just like bunches, my acne, depressed, and I was still thinking nothing related to PCOS. So it's just crazy because, you do what you do with the information that you're told. If they don't
Yeah.
tell you more than just like, we're gonna regulate your period, here's birth control, let's reassess when you get pregnant, that's all you're gonna do. No one
Yeah.
told me nutrition, no one told me lifestyle changes, no one told me, your mood is gonna be like this if you're not taking care of your blood sugars. It doesn't matter if you don't have diabetes right now, like you have to take care of that. No one told
Yeah.
me anything.
That's, and it's the same. Like I ended up going on, I've been on the ring before as well. And uh I hated the pill because I feel like I would always forget because you had
Mm,
to do it the same time every day. And I, played sports and I did all these things. So I always had all of these other things on my mind. And then I was on Depo Provera for
mm.
probably like 10 years, which for me was like the most amazing thing because I didn't get a cycle, which was like the best. I was like, oh, thank the Lord,
Yeah,
right?
especially if you have like heavy cycles and painful cycles, it's like amazing, right?
Oh, girl, I remember, it would happen all the time, but I do remember one very particular moment. I was a junior in high school and I was in chemistry class and my cramps were so bad. I started crying and I'm just on the side of my desk,
Mm.
just bowling over in pain. And, but that's how it was every single month. Like I was in so much pain and it's so hard to explain to somebody when you're in that much pain. And I would just say it feels like I have little men inside me with power tools drilling at my
Yeah.
abdomen or drilling at my uterus. Like that was the only thing that I could say. When you finally figure, well, like how did you finally figure out the things that were going to help your PCOS, whether it was diet, whether it was lifestyle, what, like all of those things, because you're saying nobody's telling you anything. All they're telling you is take birth control and that'll help it, but you know that's just a band-aid and it's just a temporary fix. So how did you discover, or not discover, because I'm sure other people discovered it and you did research and you found it, right? But how did you find, like, connect those dots for you?
Yeah, so it was very interesting because time went on and I decided to work at a neurology clinic in Dallas with a neurologist whose focus was, yes, we saw cases of multiple sclerosis and fibromyalgia, but really his expertise was pain management. And so I started working for him and he hired a nurse practitioner who was focused on hormone health. And so it was very interesting because I would see patients come in. What I loved about him is that he would actually take the time to talk to the person. So we would literally we would eat in 3 seconds because the call or the consult would be like supposedly 45 minutes and we would be there for an hour and a half. But we would go like step by step, asking everything. He knew the family. Like it was like this, like what I really wanted medicine to be, like is
Do
this
you mind if I
connection.
ask what ethnicity he was?
Yeah, so he is Caucasian, he's white, but he actually went to school where I went in Guadalajara and he got married to a
Ah,
Mexican girl. So I think that's also part of why he was more like that. And so I would notice the difference, like literally, Jessica, you would not have any idea. Two people would come with multiple sclerosis or fibromyalgia. Same treatment, same medications, similar years of being diagnosed. One was seeing a dietitian, one wasn't seeing a dietitian. The one who was seeing a dietitian was hiking every day, didn't need their pain medication. They were walking without a cane, like amazing. The one who didn't go to the dietitian, like on top of all of the medications, still feeling pain, couldn't really walk. It was like such a black and white. So that's when I was like, you know what? I don't know what is that I want to do with my life, but I know that I need nutrition. Like whatever it is within medicine, I know that nutrition plays a key role because we only got like 4 months of nutrition, and that was like
I
one
was about to
semester,
say, like,
and
in
it's like
medical
one
school,
hour
they
a
don't
week.
talk about that, right?
It's
Even
like
I
one
think in
hour
the
a week.
US, like, in
Yeah.
the US, they don't talk about it either.
No, so we would get 1 hour a week for one semester, like 4 to 5 months, and that was it. So I was like, I need to know because literally, if you think about it, a lot of chronic diseases might be prevented by nutritional lifestyle changes. They can be managed by nutritional lifestyle changes. They can be reversed by nutritional lifestyle changes. And I get it, as physicians, there's so many things that you have to learn, like there's no time. But something as important as food, like it's our sustenance, like we use it and we consume it on a daily basis. To not have like a good background on that, like I was like, no, I need to get into it. And so the more I started getting into nutrition, I went to Chicago, did my license, and it was like a double. So I got license and a master at the same time.
This
And
is
that's
your
when,
dietitian license, right? Because
yeah,
coming to the US,
yeah.
even though you were a licensed doctor in Mexico, right? You were a licensed doctor. What were you specializing in then?
I didn't specialize because I was still trying to figure it out. And my idea was like I'll probably do something more towards family medicine, but more in the intuitive or integrative functional realm.
Mhm.
So I really wanted, the connection with the person. That's why I really liked family medicine. But I really wanted to use the traditional medicine from our ancestors because, they are super wise. There's
Yeah.
reasons why we do or we did the things that we did. And so that's why I was actually working with a neurologist to get more experience and then going to residency. But, life happened. I decided to do nutrition first, which I am so happy because now I get to do what I really love, which is talking to people as long as I want and really make those changes impactful. Being able to see how the things that we talk about, they don't only see benefit in their bodies or how they're feeling or in their PCOS, but it also impacts their careers, how they socialize, how they relate to their partners, to their family members. And so that is like really, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really what I wanted to do. And so because I was more in nutrition, that's when I started focusing more on like, oh, what would happen, if
Yeah.
I actually do this? And then I started noticing that I was feeling better. And so I was like, okay, there's something here, you know?
That's awesome. How do you think, like, with your medical license, even though you're not licensed in the States, you still have a medical license? How do you think that's come into play with what you do as a licensed dietitian here in the States?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think it's like full circle, because I got all the science, right? Like from the micro mini details that you could have thought, like medication, side effects, how it works, how gut flora works, how like everything works because of the nutrition. I mean, because of the medical degree. And then using the nutrition. So I just kind of combine them. So whenever we're on a session with a client, what I love doing is go over their blood work and not just be like, oh, you're high, this is what we need to do. Blah, blah. No, it's like, what is going on in your body to make this blood work show that this is high or this is low? What can we do? Is there a way that we can do this nutrition and lifestyle? Or do you actually need to, go to your medical provider and ask for X, Y, and Z so that you get the management? So I think it really incorporates really well because I use the science from both careers and then digest it so that when I explain it to you, it's so much easier to understand because I really, really believe that the more knowledge that you have, the more empowered you feel, and the more you can advocate for yourself so that you see better results. Because it's not just you and me that we're working. You have to advocate for yourself with your doctor, with your
Absolutely.
practitioners, with everyone, really. And so I think
And
if
if
you
you don't
don't,
advocate for yourself, who
no
else is
one
going to
will.
do it?
Yeah, so if you do know more about, your body, what impacts, what doesn't have an effect, you're gonna be able to be more confident and go to that consult and be like, hey, this is what's happening. I need to do this, get this checked, and get a better really like approach.
One thing that you really talk about is, obviously we as women, we don't have the resources, education, and we don't get the attention to manage all of the things. And it's even worse for Latinas. And I completely agree with you because, girl, let me tell you, in my experience, like I shared in my experience, and I thought having a woman would be better.
I know we talked about it.
No, it wasn't. I didn't feel heard until it was another like person that came from communities of color. That's when I finally found, heard. I didn't even get officially diagnosed with fibroids until I was 40 years old, 39 or 40. And that's because I kept telling the doctors to do tests and they wouldn't do anything. I felt like I look back now and here I am trying to advocate for myself
Mhm.
in my 20s and I just kept getting shut down. And I'm telling them, we have a history of this. My mom had a hysterectomy, I think she was 30,
Yeah.
right? And I've had tias and cousins and everything. Like this is not I'm not making this up in my head, right? Um and then I didn't even know officially I had endometriosis until this within this last year.
And that's crazy, right? It is so crazy, especially since you've been struggling since you first started having a period. And it's like,
And now I'm 47.
yeah, like what the heck, you know?
Like literally, I think I was 11 when I got my period. I think 11,
Hmm.
pretty sure. 11 or 12, let's just say. No, I think I was 11. So, and I officially got diagnosed with endometriosis when I was 46. Like that's like this is so many women's realities and it shouldn't be. So if women are experiencing this and they're like, I've tried to talk to my doctor, again, they're only giving me this, or I have these, I don't know if I have any of these issues. I feel like I have some of the symptoms, but what do those women do? Like, what is the first thing? Like, would you say go to the doctor to make sure you get diagnosed first? Or would you say, you know what, tell me your symptoms and let's see if diet helps first.
Yeah. So, and I love that you mentioned your experience with the fibroids and the endometriosis because I know we had this conversation before, and based on that, one of my clients was actually struggling with her OBGYN because they found a fibroid in her breast, and she wanted to go straight to biopsy and clip it, and my client was like, well, we've already done that with one of my previous fibroids and it's really hurtful and I'm just not comfortable. And it was like this urgency thing, right? So we ended up finding a doctor who is Latino, and she finally saw him, and it was completely different. It was like he sat down to really listen to her. They even talked about how they're separate, like she's separated, and really went into their story. And he didn't find anything that was like urgent, and now she's getting going to another OBGYN for another second opinion. But she felt so good about it. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because I feel like a lot of the times we almost feel, and I don't know if this is like a Latino thing, but we're almost feeling like they're doing us a favor. Like we have to comply and just be quiet and just go through the motion of things because we don't want to like bother anyone, right? But at the end of the day, it is your right. Like if you don't feel comfortable with a practitioner, you don't have to keep going to that practitioner. Like I think the
Right.
most important thing is finding someone that you feel validated and you feel heard, because it's really important. One of the things. The
Especially
second,
when it comes to your medicals.
yeah. It's when you're the most vulnerable, really. And so you really want to have that provider in any realm, right? Nutrition, medicine, PT, in anything that you can really feel that there's this confidence and that you feel heard and understood and that it is a teamwork. Because at the end of the day, you know your body the best. Like, who am I to tell you what to do if you're like, but this is not working, right? So
Mhm.
that is one of the first things. Like, always know that if you don't feel comfortable, you can go and do a second opinion. Like, you don't have to stay with a person just because you feel like you have to. The second thing is, it's crazy, but like research, they really didn't have women in their research studies until the 90s. Like the 90s.
Crazy.
Like I was 2 years old. Can you believe that?
I
And
know,
they just
yeah,
started bringing
that's
women.
crazy because so many of these research, like, if they're dated back then, you're right, everything is based on a straight white cis man within a certain height and weight, and
Mhm.
literally no other, or a black, like maybe they'll throw a black guy in there or a Latino guy in there, but otherwise it's basically like all studies were, and they would apply it to everybody when that's not, like, we're different, right?
Yeah. But if you don't have that, like when if you don't have that research, it feels like so new, right? So that's why it's also another thing that's like super annoying for all of us women because it's like, what the heck, Like, if I'm telling you that I have really bad period pain, like, why wouldn't you believe me? Is
Girl,
it
if men
that
had periods,
expensive?
this would have been solved.
Oh my God, which is why I love those Instagram reels where they put the sensors to men so that they can see the period because I'm like, I've had periods where I pass out. Like, you
we
need to
have
understand what's pain.
we have one of those electrode things, and I had put them, like, I would put them on every once in a while, when I was had really bad cramps, and mine, it would be maxed out like all the way, and it still did not compare to the cramps that
At
I was
all,
getting.
at
My
all.
husband puts it on 3 and he's like, oh, and, he's like, how are you doing it? How
And
did you do this higher? I'm like, I had to get an endometrial biopsy. I've had to get a
yeah.
couple of them. And
Hmm.
if you've never had to get one, basically, you know, you're in the stirrups like you normally are. And they get these scissors with like little, what would you call them? Like little teeth at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
So they put the speculum in, they go in, and they're basically cutting your endometrial tissue, your uterine, like your uterine tissue. They're taking it, and it hurts. So the first time I had it done was a few years ago, and it hurt, and I was bleeding so hard. This last time I did it last year, my pain had increased so much that I literally just breathed through it, and the doctors and the nurses were like, they literally go, "What the hell? How are you, like, you?" They're like, "Oh girl, you're taking it like a champ. You're doing so well." And the other side of it is that we don't get pain meds for those things. We just have to grin and bear it as they're cutting part of our
You
insides
just have to
out.
take deep breaths, and that's
Yeah.
pretty
Well,
much it.
I did, and I like, I actually, but
Yeah.
mine was so like um it was, my cervix wouldn't even open, that they had to have like a
Dilation.
specialist with the camera, like, to go in because they couldn't find their way through, like it wasn't opening. So girl, I'm telling you, if
Yeah.
it, like, I've had so many things go wrong in my womb, but I think that's also such a huge thing, right? Like, if you decide to get birth controls, you decide to get an IUD, there's no pain meds for that. I had to get an endometrial biopsy, there's no pain meds for that. It's like we're just expected to grin and bear it for everything. And when somebody's telling you, like, how do you help people advocate for themselves? Because I'm sure that's part of what you do, because you went through so much. Like, for me, I feel like if that were my job, I would be doing the same thing. Like, no, you go back with this and this. And then, like, how do you help people advocate for themselves?
Yeah, so first and foremost, and I think it goes back to your previous question, I think it's very important to have a journal so that you can bring that information to your physician because your doctor only has 15 minutes to see you. So if you start by like, I have irregular periods and this and that, the conversation is going to go so fast and you're not going to get anywhere. But if you start by providing the journal of like, okay, I have irregular periods. Here is like how it's been the past few months. I had one in February. It's been 5 months. I haven't had another one. My blood flow is heavy. I have clots, X, Y, and Z. I pass out. Like as much information as you can give, right? In those three, specifically if we talk about PCOS, I would say have a journal where you're tracking your period. So one of the things that we never got taught is how to track your ovulation. I learned it because I was in the role, but before I had no idea. So, learning how to track your ovulation, which is usually with one of the ways is a thermometer. You put it underneath your mouth every morning at the same time, and that will give you like a number, right? And so you just track it and big picture, you'll see like your temperatures are low and then when they go high, that means that you already ovulated. So that could be like a cool way to show your physician, hey, I'm not having a period, like this is what's happening. But then what other things have you been experiencing? Because I think a lot of the times, and I've been thinking about this so often, like why, like for example, us as Latinas, like why did we move so much from our culture, right? We were very big on big family dinners and cooking and homemade food. It's because the environment, like we're working full time. Both people are working full time. You don't have time to cook a 7-hour mole because who's gonna be watching it in the kitchen, right? Like I just wanna
No, girl.
done and just have something to eat
When
and
it comes to stuff like that, I am semi homemade, which means like I buy it in the jar and then add my own stuff.
right? Because we don't have the time. So one of the things that we've also been straight away from it is actually paying attention to your body. So by having a journal, if you can see like, okay, I feel bloated with these meals. I've noticed that I'm not sleeping well. My stress level is X, Y, and Z. My hair is falling. Do I have acne anywhere? Because those are all signs and symptoms of PCOS. And now the thing with PCOS is that it is a diagnosis of exclusion. So what that means is that they have to check how your thyroid is, because it could be that it's your thyroid and not necessarily PCOS. So they have to take into account other things to then be like, okay, you do have PCOS.
So does PCOS typically mask itself as other things? So you have to test all these things in order to determine it is PCOS?
So it's not necessarily that it masks itself. It is just that the symptoms are very, um, they can be related to different things. For example, if I'm telling you hair loss, right? Hair loss could be PCOS, but it could also be that you're deficient in iron. But it could also mean that you have hypothyroidism. So it could be a nutrient deficiency, it can be another type of hormone, or it could be something like PCOS. So if you're struggling with hair loss, then that would be like something that your doctor should take into account, right? What I do with my clients a lot of the times is that they go see their physicians. I kind of sometimes give them a script and I just tell them like this is what you need to ask, or this is what you need to tell your doctor about it. Or as I said, that client, she was like, I'm just not feeling like, it's so urgent. I'm so stressed. I'm like, you can ask for a second opinion. A lot of the times it's just hearing and being like, you are right. Because how many times have they told you, Jessica, you are right. You are in pain. You're feeling these feelings and they are true, right? So a lot of the times we just need that confidence of like what
Yeah.
I'm experiencing, it's actually happening. I just need to tell it to someone else. So journaling is cool because then doctors are like detectives. And they just need like to piece the puzzle. So if you can give them that, it's going to make their job a lot easier, but it's also going to help you feel heard because if you're like, no, 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 like I know you keep telling me that it's fine, but is it fine that on January 27 when I had my period I passed out? Like, is that normal? And then they're going to be like, oh, probably it's not normal, right? Like people should not be passing out from their
Yeah.
pain. And so that can really help to just bring some up like that voice. And then at the end of the day, also, I think a lot of the times that something that can help feel more empowering is also following people who you can relate and they kind of struggle with the same things, because then you can be like, oh, like I do feel this way too. And there is a reason why, right? Because as women, we've always been told that it is normal, that you have a period and it's painful and you still have to work. You still have to do things because you're expected to do things, but it's really important for us to be like, okay, what is a normal period pain and what is not a normal period pain? Do
Yeah.
you have a normal period pain or you do not? And if you don't, then we have to write as much as possible what is your type of period pain. Because what you told me, if it's little men that are drilling, probably that's not normal, right? Like that is
All
probably
right.
like intense pain. So I just kind of help them with like what questions they can ask, where do they have to be more informed, and really understanding a lot more about their PCOS so that they know that when they have their physical, something that's very important is to check their vitamin D, like ask for that. Because at the end of the day, if you don't ask, who's going
The
to know?
answer is always no if you don't ask the question.
You already have the no, right?
Yeah. But I can't, girl, this hour has already we're already wrapping up. But I do are there a couple of foods that I'm sure everybody's different, right? But is there a thread that you've seen like as something similar that runs through that you could kind of share that people are like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that, or I never tried that when it comes to like their nutrition?
Yeah. So it's very interesting because, as you mentioned in my bio, like I really focus on cultural foods and specifically talking about the Latino culture. We have a really rich, not only flavorful, but like super nutritious types of meals and foods and ingredients and just el sazon, right? Like
That's
it's like
right. Yeah.
beautiful. Like there's a reason why our cuisine is in the UNESCO, like there is such a richness in our foods. And our food actually, it's crazy because there's studies that if you eat more traditional Latino food, it's actually better in your metabolically speaking than when we assimilate and then we go to Americanized food, which is crazy, right? Because when we move to the US, we all want to assimilate
Yeah.
and we are started eating the foods that Americans
But
eat,
it's all the preservatives, all the hormones, all of those
ultra
other things.
processed
Yeah.
foods, all of those things. So my suggestion would be the first thing, whether you're struggling with diabetes, PCOS, even, something as like hypothyroidism, endometriosis, which there is, as you know, not really a treatment, but nutrition and lifestyle changes can help as well. Um, all of those things, they usually promote like an anti-inflammatory type of diet. Foods that will help fight that inflammation in your body. Which one is the component that is the most anti-inflammatory ever? It's actually fiber. So think about fiber. How can you incorporate it in your meals? Me, for example, I've noticed that with the clients that I work, a lot of them don't like vegetables. And it makes sense, right? When they moved to the States, their parents were working. We had to go with like ready to eat meals, different type of meals. And maybe it was harder to get vegetables in the table. So now that we're older, it's a little bit trickier to be like, okay, where is that salad? Where is those nopales? So I would say if you can, just starting, if you can add more fiber into your meals, then that would be the best thing. How can you
And
do
I
it?
think the low carb tortillas, I think those are higher in fiber too.
They do have fiber. They have a lot of fiber actually. Actually, I would say if you use those, make sure that you don't get bloated because they have like 20 grams of fiber. It's like a bomb in your belly.
It's a
But like,
fiber bomb.
yeah, but like super simple things that you
I
can do.
mean, beans have a ton of fiber,
A
right? Like
ton of
that's
fiber.
that's so much a part of what our culture
Yeah.
eats,
Yeah,
which
it's
I
super
love.
simple. So, breakfast. Are you someone who does more like smoothies because you're like on the go already? Add some chia seeds, add some flax seeds. You're adding fiber that way. Um, Lunch or dinner, have some beans, add some nopales. Want the easiest thing? I always start with my clients, just freaking add cucumbers and tomatoes. Lime, sea salt, Valentina or Tajin, half the plate. You don't need anything more. You're getting into the mojo of it. Chayote, oh my God, it's so amazing. Nopales is the best thing. So my only recommendation would be, find ways that you can add fiber, as you said, beans, lentils, chickpeas, which are super used in our cuisines, nopales, chayote, like all the veggies that they are. Do you want them? Like, are you like, I don't want them steamed or I don't like them baked? Raw, lime, Valentina, tahini, salt, you're ready to go. It's that type of thing. But I think you're going to notice that you're going to be feeling yourself, like you're going to feel more full and satisfied. You're going to eat less tortillas and your belly's gonna feel better because it's crazy. If you add fiber, your gut flora is gonna feel happier. So you're gonna feel less bloated. Your immune system is gonna be better. Your mood is gonna be better. You're gonna have more energy. So it's just like everything kind of correlates, and really fiber for PCOS is one of the most important things. I always have nopales because of it. It's just
No,
like,
I love nopales. No, I'm so glad you said that because, everything is different. And when, like, for myself, with everything going on, I'm gonna be very transparent with everything going on. And after having my hysterectomy, because I was doing like the Mediterranean diet, which I love because seafood is my favorite.
mhm.
And I can't say a particular dish, just seafood. Because first of all, every cuisine, there's seafood in every cuisine, right?
I
Like
mean, ceviche,
I
right?
summertime, I'm like the ceviche queen. I make so much ceviche during summertime. And whether it's salmon or whether it's shrimp or girl, I that's like the one thing I could eat forever. Like, and there's so much of it. And we were doing so, and I was making my husband do Mediterranean diet with me because I'm the one who cooks. So you're gonna eat what I make.
Yeah, that's the deal.
Yes. But I was already noticing, like, I was my and I was working, and I work and not was work out, take the dog. I take my dogs between 10 and 15 miles a week, right? Like, I walk a lot. I love walking. And the crazy thing is after my hysterectomy, which I had like a full hysterectomy, I know I was telling you. Um, I doing the same things, but because of the total shift of my hormones, I started
Mhm.
gaining weight. And it was really frustrating me because I'm like, what the heck? I'm doing all of the things I'm supposed to be doing and blah blah blah. So um I'm even on hormone replacement therapy. Like, girl, I'm doing this, like everything it says. And finally, I was just like, I can't take this anymore. Why am I gaining weight? And so my sister's soon to be husband, well, by the time this comes out, my sister's husband, um, what he has a weight loss clinics as well. So I just went to him and I was like, I need help. This is not fun. Like, this is not fun. I am gaining weight. I'm feeling sluggish. I'm eating what I should be eating, right? Now I'm a menopausal woman, right? I'm postmenopausal woman now. And so I basically got to the point where now I'm taking the shot. Like, I'm taking one that starts with a T. I forget what it's called, but it's like what the Manjaro one is, I guess.
Mm.
That's the one that they use. And for me, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to feel guilty so I'm saying this because I don't want any woman to feel guilty about what you have to do for your health. Because, we have a family history of diabetes, high blood pressure, cancer, all of these things. So I'm like, look, I'm going to continue to eat right and do the things that I enjoy. And I do enjoy, like, I'm one of those weirdos who's like, um, and my husband does make fun of me for this, where I'm like the coconut aminos. I'm like, to me, it tastes just like soy sauce. And he goes,
Oh,
it did.
really? I could not do
Oh,
it. I was
I
like,
think
it's
it's
too sweet
fine.
for
I liked,
me.
you know why? It's because I don't, I'm not, I know why. It's because I'm not a very I don't like things that are super salty,
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
and I'm not like a big sweets person. I love like the umami flavors. I definitely am a savory person. But like I'm like if you're mixing it with food, to me it was fine. Like I was fine. And then my husband's like, "No, you're ridiculous." But so my whole point in saying that is like you don't know what your body's going to respond to until, but you need to be able to say something. You need to say something, you need to try the things, you need to um listen to your body when it's saying no. It's okay to say no. I'm just so appreciative of everything that you've shared, Ellie, because like honestly, we could probably do another part to it, right? Because there's so much that
So much.
we need to share with one another and that we need to learn about, but there's just not enough people who are willing to. And even when it comes to, you're so right, when it comes to like focusing on Latina health and in our cultural foods, because there are people who, I don't know if you saw this one TikToker before, who was like, who said salsa wasn't a vegetable.
Oh my God, yeah. I was like,
And
oh my God, you don't know because he was dietitian drama.
yeah,
Like,
there's
oh my,
major dietitian drama. And I'm like,
yeah.
salsa's nothing but vegetables.
Like literally,
So
how are you making salsa? Maybe they've never made salsa, so that's why they
they
didn't.
probably get like paste picante or something like that.
No, yeah, totally. Man, and honestly, it is how you said, right? Like at the end of the day, I one of the things that I really advocate because in the PCOS world or like with hormones, I feel like there's very like a divisive, like black and white of like everything natural or medication, but there's not in between. And there's a lot of people who are like trashing medicines, and then there's medicines that are trashing the other side.
Yeah.
But in reality, it should be blended because as you mentioned, you don't, first and foremost, you shouldn't have to be like, let me give you the reasons why I'm using this medication. Like it should be like I'm using this medication and that's it. My body, my freaking choice.
Yeah.
But
Unfortunately, there's just so much judgment when it goes
but there's
along with
so
that.
much judgment because that is how we've been doing everything on social media. Like if we don't agree with something, then there's that judgment. But I think it's amazing that you're doing it because you tried whatever it is that you tried and it didn't work. You're using something to help you while you're still doing the things that you gotta do. So where is the wrong on that? Like. But then you're gonna hear people saying like, "Oh, she's just doing the easy way out," and it's
Yeah.
like, why? Like, you know. So yeah, definitely. Like, always stand proud and don't feel shame or judgment or guilt whenever you need to use a medication because that's why they were created. You can have a balance of traditional medicine, nutrition, lifestyle, and then use something like allopathic medicine. Like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. And I think that's where we are right now, where it's like either supernatural or not at all. And it's the middle. It always ends up being the middle,
Yeah.
that great.
Right? No, I completely agree. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I just want to make sure there are any last thoughts beyond what you've just said. If there's any last thoughts, please share them now.
Well, I'm like, we definitely need to do a part two.
Duh.
That's my last thought. No, but in reality, I think is the last thing that I want to say is always trust yourself. That if you feel like there's something that's just not feeling right, trust that and look for people who really relate to you or who can connect with you and really find your tribe. We in the Latino community, we really thrive with community. And I think I've noticed it in myself, like whenever I am with like a bunch of Latina entrepreneurs, my fire just like is higher and I love it. Same thing with anything that's hormonal. At the end of the day, find your community, find your tribe, find the practitioners that you really feel connected, that it is a teamwork, that you feel heard and validated, and that you guys are doing everything together. Because one
Right.
thing is the expertise of the knowledge, but the other thing is your expertise in your body. And I think really magic happens when both of those combine. And then lastly, if you can keep a journal, I know we've talked about that for a while, but if you are into bullet journaling or not, I think it would be really good. Because you can really find a lot of information when you just pay attention to what are you doing on a day-to-day basis, right? It's just like a pot, like a plant. If you look at it every day and you water it, you're gonna know if it needs more shade, if it needs more light, if it needs more water, if it doesn't need more water, if it needs a change in pot. We're the same. We're literally the same. And really the only reason why I'm suggesting journal is because we're so on the go that we don't have time to just sit with ourselves and be like, today I'm feeling good. Maybe it's because I had this thing, right? So
Right.
journaling can really help.
Thank you so much, girl. We will definitely do a part two in the future for sure. But, I appreciate you like taking the time to share your story, to share what you like, how you work and everything. And if you want to follow my Miss Ellie in the future on social media, then go ahead and go to weightloss.pcos on Instagram. Are you on any other sites?
I'm in the process of creating a YouTube channel. So it's TBD.
Ooh.
Yeah, I want to do it more like recipes. So
Oh, yeah.
easy recipes. Kind of what you said of like, you buy the salsa and then you add your things, kind of
Yeah.
like
Oh, I
similar.
don't buy salsa. I make my
Good.
salsa.
Yeah, I mean
That
salsa.
is one thing. No,
Yeah.
mole. Yeah.
Man, I can't do mole. I wish I could, but I can never.
You know what? I just don't have that kind of time. Like you said, I just don't have that kind of time and I'm not going to spend that much. So let's just do like semi homemade. That's
I
what I
love that.
call it.
Yeah. Same thing, best of both worlds, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Because I don't like exactly how it tastes when it comes out of the
Mhm.
can or the bottle or whatever. So yeah, I have to make it my own.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that.
So, well, mi gente, make sure to follow Ellie, reach out. If you've had any of these issues or you have questions, make sure to reach out because I know that she will be very, very open. And until next time.
Bye.